Welcome, everybody, to the By Teen for Teen Advocacy Workshop on Family Equality's Neighborhood Hub. We're hoping that a lot of teens are joining us today and that you enjoy our workshops. And with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters.
Hi, so today we're going to start off by doing some introductions with all of the presenters. Then Weston is actually going to model some story sharing for us today, which is going to be the topic of our workshop. And then Selma is actually going to help break that down for us with a presentation. I can start by introducing myself. My name is Alan. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm a rising senior. And I've become really interested in advocacy because I think it's a way for me to be able to use some of my skills to help those in my community.
My name is Selma. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm also from the greater Boston area. I am going into 11th grade, and I was birthed into advocacy, and this is what I do.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Weston Charles Gallo. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am from Missouri, and I really kind of started advocacy when I really knew that there is an issue with LGBTQ youth in the foster care system not being represented and not sharing their voice for change, to get the proper resources, networking, and connections within the system.
So next, I think Weston is going to take the opportunity to share his story with all of you, as well as some details around that, and model what we're going to be talking about in our workshop, in our breakout groups after this.
Yeah, so my intended audience today is members of Congress. I wanted to kind of capture a short little elevator speech if you're talking to members of Congress within your advocacy journey. My message is really to kind of elevate my story to raise awareness for LGBTQ youth in the foster care system and kind of very invoke change and work on public policy. So here I go. My name is Weston Charles Gallo, and I'm working with the Family Equality Council to fight discrimination against LGBTQ youth in the foster care and adopted parents. And here's why. When I was 16 years old, I was on the verge of suicide. My two dads found me and saved my life. I come from a family that was broken from the start. They were very religious, as well as abusive and neglectful. When I admitted to them that I identified as gay, they wanted nothing to do with me. I ended up in the foster care system. I self-harmed, which resulted in many, many visits to hospitals, and I bounced from foster home to foster home. I even lived in a shelter at one point. When I was at the lowest point of my life, I wanted to end all the pain altogether. I found out some amazing news that I would be placed with my two dads and my 6 siblings. My dad showed me what a true marriage was like, how to live a normal life, and what it was like to be loved and to feel loved. I feel incredibly fortunate that I was given a forever family with people who loved me, but also saw the importance to give children a second chance. Many say I'm lucky. I say I'm very fortunate because there is a foster care, children, and adoption crisis in this country. The U.S. has over 440,000 children in the foster care system, with over 120,000 waiting for adoption. However, 10 states and potentially more to come allow taxpayer-funded child welfare agencies to turn away qualified parents who are LGBTQ or who are not Christian. We need to end this discrimination and the foster care crisis by passing the Every Child Deserves a Family Act, which is sponsored by Congressman John Lewis. Today, I know that being gay does not define who I am, but is a huge part of what I am proud to be. A strong, resilient individual who will continue to advocate for the lives of LGBTQ youth in care across the country. The young people who so often feel like their voice is not heard and no one is on their side. My voice will only get louder. My determination will only get stronger. I'm not giving up until there's no fight left. Thank you.
That was absolutely beautiful, Weston. Um, and with that, thank you so much for sharing that. And now I'm going to share the way that you can also be so persuasive with your words, what tools Weston used to tell this wonderful story. So I'm going to share my screen to do that. So we often regard how to tell your story as safe storytelling because we don't want to hurt you, we don't want to put you in danger, and we don't want to put any other people in danger as well, so the people you're telling a story to. So storytelling and activism is really important because it helps gain connections between people, it fights stereotype, it gives motivation for action, and it's more tangible than a concept. It also builds community. And in Weston's story, we really saw that when he was talking about how he used his emotions and expressed those, and he continued at the end of his story to explain that he's going to keep fighting for this continued change. He's including the senators and other people and you, the viewers, in his story, in his life, and continuing it and telling you, you should also fight for this because I'm so passionate about it, and this is extremely important. So it's an extremely effective tool in activism. But when we're telling the stories, we have to ask ourselves a few questions so that we can make it clearer. So first of all, what's our message with the story? What is our intention with this story? And there is a difference between them. A message could be that police brutality is rampant in the country and they get too much the police gets too much funding for the amount that they hurt communities. And your purpose, your intention would be to defund the police or get a local committee to not increase the funding of a police force. That's just one example. When you're telling your story, you also want to ask what's your audience. So in Weston's story, he explained how his audience would be maybe a senator in an elevator or someone on the House floor. And we ask ourselves, how did this audience relate to me? How can I trust them? How much should I share? So Weston did censor himself in some way when telling his story, and yet was also effective because these people he didn't really know him. They were kind of strangers, but at the same time, he was trying to get a message across. And this is where precautions about messaging come in. So green statements like, I have a brother, are pretty easy to say around strangers because you feel safe. You probably would say this in the majority of circumstances. There are some circumstances where you wouldn't say this, but in most scenarios you would. However, yellow statements and red statements are more tricky. Yellow statements are ones that you would share with people that you have more trust in. For example, sometimes that can be elected members of Congress, sometimes it won't be. It really depends on your comfort level. And red statements are things that you wouldn't share with many people. They can be really, they can be things that are really close to your heart, but they can also be things that are about other people that you haven't gotten permission. So in Weston's story, he really focused on himself. He didn't focus on anybody else. And while there were very influential people in his life, as he explained, his foster parents, he didn't focus too much on them because he's not telling their story. He's telling his own story and being super effective by doing so. Then sometimes you want to focus on an event. Now, in Weston's story, he started at the age of 16 really with his story, and that was kind of his main event. Now, this was more of a prolonged event, but in some cases, you may want to use, like a specific event that brought a call to activism or a call to action, like being pulled over by the police or something. And then you want it to be clear. Do you have a beginning, middle, and end? In Weston's story, we really did see that it did have a beginning, middle, and end. And he really clearly explained what emotions he was feeling so that the senators would understand and so that the senators would hear this. And you want to make sure that your message is shining through, which Weston really did by having a wonderfully effective story, but also at the end, he explained what he will continue to do to fight for what he was fighting for. Sorry, that wasn't super clear. And then you want to check it again. If you write it down, you write some bullet points. You want to check that it meets the requirements and the questions that I had asked before, but you also want to make sure that you're feeling safe. So if anything is not met in the questions that I've asked before, you may not feel safe, and maybe you still don't feel safe. How about you revise the story depending on where you are, who you're with, and also you don't totally need to share. Once you've completed all these steps, I mean, just go for it.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Selma. That was a really great presentation. And Weston, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.